Hello and welcome to Something You Should Know. I'm Diane Galeese Parsons, and this is my co-host for this evening, Sarah Klein. And
Good evening.
I should give a little bit of background before I introduce our guests, and that is that I used to do this program with our state representative, Gail Ann Caridi, and Gail Ann also did this program with Marie Harpin, and you are used to seeing the two Maries Harpin doing this program, but this evening, I'm doing it with my daughter, Sarah Klein, because she has some validity as a resident of Adams. And the something you should know this evening is what's percolating in Adams. Now I'd like to introduce you to our guests because there is a lot that's percolating in Adams right now. And we have two guests. On the end is the town administrator, Jay Green.
Hi, everybody.
And on his right is Donna Cezanne, who is the Community Development Director in Adams. And she has been for quite a long time.
Yes.
How long, Donna?
Next year it will be 20 years.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, congratulations. Seen a lot of change.
Right. And the town administrator is a relative newcomer.
Far, far less. Only 6 months at this point.
Yeah. And if I could, I wonder if I could get you to give a little bit of your background. I know you as you were a administrative assistant to the mayor of North Adams at one point.
Yes, 2 mayors.
And because we have this in common, we love choo-choo trains. So do you want to give a little bit more of your background, Jay?
Sure. I grew up in the Chicopee-Holyoke area. I attended Holyoke Catholic High School and then went on to attend St. Anselm College in Manchester, New Hampshire. My background in educational studies was all law enforcement, criminal justice, and political science. After I graduated from St. A's, I attended a U.S. military officer training school, police academy, and then eventually attended law school. And it was after graduation from law school that brought me to the Berkshires. My wife and I relocated here. I took a job as an assistant district attorney with the district attorney's office. I was assigned for a good portion of my time with the DA's office up here in Northern Berkshire District Court. And that's really where I kind of fell in love with the Northern Berkshires, and it felt very much like home, very similar New England recovering mill town. And then after several years of doing that, I had the privilege of serving Mayor Barrett and Mayor Alcombright as administrative officer for the city of North Adams. After doing that, I took about an 8-year leave of absence, as I've been saying lately, and I worked for Amtrak, National Railroad Passenger Corporation in Rensselaer, New York. I was responsible for about 40 employees and 20 facilities from the New York Canadian border, Vermont border, all the way down to just north of New York City. And after doing that commute for about 8 years and being out of the Berkshires, I realized that I missed being involved. So that brought me back. Adams was looking for a town administrator, and I'm grateful that they gave me the opportunity to do that. So here I am, and it's been a wild 6 months.
Wow, 6 months, and that's not long, but there is a lot that's percolating.
We're
in
very
Adams,
busy. We're very busy.
there?
A lot of things going on.
Right. And Donna, can we have a little bit of your background, if you don't mind? I know you've told us 20 years in Adams.
Right. My background is in land use planning. I work for the Commonwealth of Virginia as an environmental planner in their Chesapeake Bay program before returning home to Western Massachusetts. I grew up in Agawam.
Really?
Yeah, so it was good to be back
Pioneer Valley, yeah.
by family. And but my focus has always been state government or local government. I think I prefer local government. That's where state policies, state programs really have their impact. So that's been the work that I've enjoyed doing. We have seen Adams, even though I think generally Adams is cautious about change. I think we have seen a lot of change, a lot of new projects in the town over the years. So it's really been a pleasure. I've enjoyed the work that I've done with Adams very much. It's a wonderful community. And I have to say, it really embodies the word community, the town. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely.
I think so. And to get to my co-host, because as I said, that gives me validity because she is a resident of Adams, but also, do you want to tell us what your your bona fides are
So,
in Adams.
so I'm a town meeting member, and I am a relatively new finance committee member, and I'm also a member of Pro Adams. And I actually had approached you. We had
Right.
discussed a lot of things happening in Adams, and I said, you know, this might be a good topic for you to present on your show. And she gave it some thought, and she said yes. And then she said, would you like to co-host? And I said, no, absolutely not. And but
Actually, I have to tell you that we did, Marie and I discussed it, and we decided that Sarah had more validity as a co-host because of her residency in Adams and her interest in Adams. I should tell you that she also has two daughters who went through the public school system, and even for a while in the parochial school system in Adams. Anyway, I became interested because of what I was reading about this possible zoning change, and I wanted to learn a little bit more about it, and so did she. And I know that the town has offered a lot of opportunities for people in the town to learn about something that's called smart growth. And it's also a state program. As Donna mentioned, we have state programs, and they're usually actually administered or, enforced through the local. And so I wanted to learn a little bit more about the Chapter 40R overlay. So, as I said, I'm interested in knowing what it is, who has authority over it, and what's the timeline.
Sure.
So can we get started?
I'll start off and just give a little bit of context, and then Donna can certainly take over at some of the more details. I think it's important that our viewers understand right now Adams is in a really good financial position. We're very solid. We have strong foundational budgetary controls right now. But we all know from speaking with our constituents that we get a lot of feedback about the tax rate. At the end of the day, there's really only two ways to lower that tax rate. One, we cut the budget, our spending, or two, we expand the tax base. That's what the context of 40R is in. It's expanding that tax base. We're a very lean operating town, I can tell you that just after 6 months. It's very lean. There's not a lot left to cut. So what do we do? What do we do for our constituents to help drive that tax rate down and expand that tax base? We have to look at economic development initiatives. And I think that's what our viewers really should understand and should know, that that's the context that this is in. It's an economic development tool. It's a tool that deals with zoning. And before I let Donna take over some of the details, it's essentially an overlay district. That is, any of the properties that you'll see on our graphic when Dave puts that up momentarily, it overlays the existing zoning. So to keep it simple, if you had an industrial zoned building and 40R goes over it, you can still do an industrial purpose in that building. But what it does is it expands the opportunity for a developer and a property owner to come in and say, I think we could do housing in this building. It was developed for basically New England mill towns. That's in the Commonwealth. That's essentially what the purpose is, to revitalize downtown urban areas. And I think it's important that people understand it doesn't limit us. It expands the opportunity. And there's state incentives that come along with it for a developer who may say, it's not right for me yet to invest in Adams. But if we were to adopt 40R, there's state incentives that the developer gets in order to turn around and say, now this makes sense for me economically, I'm going to invest. And that's where, as a community, we're coming from. In terms of the timeline, in terms of some of the other details, I can let Donna fill in some of that.
So, I mean, as Jay said, the program, it does not take away anything. It just adds. The underlying zoning remains intact. It does not force a developer or a property owner to do housing. It just creates the opportunity. It creates a pathway for more resources and incentivizes it. Some of the resources are both to the community in the form of incentive payments and to the developer. There is a lot of state money that is focused on housing development, and those developers that are 40R get prioritized treatment to access that funding. So I think it's important that this is a long-term program. The properties that we've identified in the 40R, first of all, they're all along the Route 8 corridor, and that's a requirement of 40R. You're supposed to be focusing, this is the smart growth aspect, that it's properties that are served by existing utilities, areas that are walkable, not car-centric, but places where you could almost have vertical living. Have you live in a building, you grab a cup of coffee, you drop your laundry off, maybe you drop your children off at a daycare, all in the same proximity. So that's a big focus of the program, and every one of the properties that we've included have had housing discussed at one time or another.
If I could just explain to some viewers who may not know this, I happen to drive through Adams or go to Adams almost every day of the week. And Route 8 actually drives through downtown North Adams. Park Street is actually Route 8.
And downtown,
Yes.
right.
And the downtown area. So, and as I've said, since I drive through it or actually go to Town Hall, I should mention that I go to Town Hall because I'm a volunteer constituent service person for Representative John Barrett. So that's why I'm in the basement of Town Hall a couple of mornings a week. But one of the things that I notice, whether I'm driving to Lenox, which I also do every week, and driving through downtown North Adams, is that I notice it's a beautiful downtown. Everybody who drives through it notices or walks through. The library is lovely. The town common, which I understand is undergoing some changes. And the east side of Adams downtown is lovely. But I do notice the same thing that I notice in Pittsfield and in North Adams. There are a lot of empty storefronts there. They're beautiful buildings and lovely exteriors, but it looks underutilized to me. Am I incorrect or not?
They clearly are, and we hear that quite a bit from a variety of different constituents that we speak with. And in fact, some folks have said that of all the 32 communities in the Berkshires, Adams has the nicest downtown. We were spared urban renewal. North Adams had a lovely downtown. Half of Main Street was removed during urban renewal. Adams was spared the majority of that. And I think the one thing that people should know in particular is there's only so much that town government can do to promote business development or to promote a vacancy of a building.
Sure.
At the end of the day, the landlords own those buildings, they control the rent, and they essentially control the destiny.
And they have a responsibility.
They do.
Before the show, Don and I were talking a little bit about that. And, one of the things that you mentioned with 40R is it's a tool to make opportunities more promising for developers in Adams. The town has provided a lot of development tools. I feel like the town has certainly done their share of opening and providing opportunities with some of the downtown development that you've worked on.
Yeah, we had an extensive facade and signage improvement program that we offered to downtown building owners. It was quite popular. And really, I think a lot of the character and beauty of downtown buildings is due to that facade program.
But again, as you said and as Donna said, we can build it, and they'll come, but then they need to then take the next steps. And
Correct.
We can't make folks take the next steps. We can provide incentives, we can provide the tools. The next step is in the developers' next steps.
Correct. The last piece that we're trying to do, and it's not directly related to downtown, and I'm happy to come back and speak to this again, but we're going to roll out for Small Business Month in November a streamlined process called Roadmap to Ribbon Cutting. And we're going to make it very clear to the public, at large and local, that Adams is pro-business. And we are prepared. We want your business. We want you to come to Adams. We're ready to go. We have the canvas. We're just waiting for the individual pieces to be put into place. At the same time, we're looking at zoning. We're looking at planning. Our zoning laws, and Donna can speak to this, needs to be updated. And it's not necessarily a competition between communities. There's a lot of synergy between Adams and North Adams and Northern Berkshire, and there's synergy throughout the county. But Adams, we can't be stagnant. We have to move forward. We have to progress. And that's what these conversations really are. It doesn't mean it has to come at lightning speed. It doesn't have to come tomorrow. But we have to keep an eye on our future, being proud of our past, and looking to see where does Adams fit into the region. Not just us locally anymore. It's not our 23 square miles. It's where does Adams fit in to the greater Berkshire County? What's our role? And that's where Greylock Glen, that's where 40R comes into place. A lot of folks say, Jay, we don't need more housing. What we need is more business. We need more jobs. True, but not unlike the 1950s and 60s when General Electric was at its peak, Adams has always been a bedroom community. We've always had those homes. Folks tell me you couldn't even get out onto Route 8 in between 3 and 5 o'clock during the heyday because of the shift work coming back up northbound from Pittsfield. That's where the jobs are. I attended an economic development summit this week with Congressman Neal, and Wayfair spoke. They're going to put 300 jobs into the Berkshires working in Pittsfield and potentially more. Where are these folks going to live? A job goes home at night. General Dynamics always has perpetually hundreds of jobs available on their website. Where are these folks going to live? If we are smart about this, Adams can position itself to be once again the bedroom community of the Berkshires. We have some great businesses. We have opportunity for more, but we don't want to just be myopic and look at one aspect of it. What else can we do to make Adams really a great community where people want to come and live? And that's where this 40R context comes into place, all of that.
One of the other things that you and I spoke about earlier this week, what I've heard in the community is relating the affordable piece, affordable housing piece. Oh, it's low-income housing. I say, no, it's not low-income housing. It's affordable housing, and there's a distinct difference. You want to talk about
sure,
that
Donna,
a little bit?
do you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people term it because, for whatever reason, affordable has a negative connotation. They talk about it in terms of workforce housing. It's basically what we call low to moderate income. We use the same standard. It's 80% of median household income, and it's based on the Pittsfield MSA Metropolitan Statistical Area. So for a single, we're talking about a limit, income limit of $49,700. That's a pretty good starter job.
It's not low income.
So it really is low to moderate income.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
For a single, but then
And then it escalates in terms of number of members of the household, and
do you know the number for a family of 4 off the top of your head?
I believe it's 70,000.
So
a little
that's-
more than 70,000. Right.
Right.
Right. And for all households, this is an aggregate of all households in the metropolitan statistical area, so it's a much broader area than Adams itself, but that aggregate is $80,000. So again, these ceilings for rent, the ceilings for income, they change. Basically, they change annually, but sometimes there's adjustments during the year. So again, we use it for our housing rehab program. So I think it actually captures a lot of residents within the town of Adams.
Sure.
We're at 58% right now, low to moderate income. So.
I look at, because you say how flexible this is, in allowing so many uses in this zoning overlay. And I look at the mill across from the visitor center. I don't know what
Berkshire Mills.
Berkshire Mill housing. Now, that is a beautiful rendering of
Mixed
you know,
use.
It
mixed
is.
use.
First floor is entirely mixed use. The upper floors are residential. And although it wasn't constructed under a 40R program, that's
It could
exactly
be,
the,
right.
it's the textbook example of what 40R what the state legislature, our general court, through 40R is trying to achieve in certain communities, that type of reuse and redevelopment. Adams is perfect for
Right.
that. Look at our mill buildings.
Right. And I also look at Lenox, where I spend at least one day a week and probably sometimes 2 or 3. I look at the Curtis Hotel building, which is also converted into a mixed-use residential and commercial. And I'm aware of how popular that is as a residential opportunity for people.
Well, sure. How great to get out of bed, go downstairs,
Right.
buy a cup of coffee,
Right.
drop off your laundry.
Yeah, I think it's very attractive for young professionals, people that, this is their first apartment, they want to live with other young professionals. But I also think empty nesters that are tired of mowing the lawn, tired of taking care of a yard, they would really welcome this type of living. And let's face it, we have like the Berkshire Mills building. We always hear there's a waiting list to get one of their units. So we need more type of this type of housing, more kind of.
And as I've said, I know because there are more people actually living alone, and especially at my age group, that there are a number of people who do like the idea of living downtown and where they don't have to be dependent on their cars or to have duties of a yard. Also, what I would like to address is what is the timeline? What's going to happen with 40R and Adams? I know you've had a couple of information sessions, and I think I heard you say there was another one upcoming. But I want to know where this is likely to go locally.
Sure. The genesis of 40R began probably about 2 years ago, 18 months ago, give or take. It's been a conversation that the community of Adams has been having for quite some time. We've had several planning board meetings where the actual the graphic that Dave may put up, which is up now, all those properties had been discussed at planning board meetings. So the planning board put together the bylaw. The bylaw reflects the graphic that you see in identifying these individual properties. We're at the stage where the planning board has finalized that development. They've developed the bylaw, and now the planning board has to vote to advance it to the select board. The select board will look at the bylaw, they will look at the overall proposal for it, and if they feel that it best reflects the work that was done by the planning board and what the intent is of the select board to move that town forward, then they'll advance it to town meeting. Town meeting must approve it. So if you are a town, like Sarah, you are a town meeting member, you will have that opportunity to vote on it. So it's important for us to educate town meeting members as well. This isn't easily understood. We understand that. And in fact, that was made readily apparent to us at that first planning board meeting.
And even the second.
And the second one.
Right.
And that's why we heard, I think it's important for us to know, our viewers should know, we heard you. Town government heard you and said, we're going to take a pause. We're going to take a 30-day break, let people catch up on this. We realized that we had to get out and provide information. Frankly, there was a tremendous amount of misinformation. Opponents of 40R were either intentionally or not, were providing misinformation. Once this is done, it's permanent. No, it's not. It can be.
It's an overlay.
It's an overlay, and we can roll it back. We have the opportunity, because the state wants communities to adopt this, we have the opportunity to receive an incentive payment from the state. We hear about, let's look at our street condition. Let's look at our infrastructure. What are we doing about streetscape? What are we doing about pavement? What are we doing with our police department? We can take that money simply for adopting this and apply it to all of those infrastructure needs without impact to the tax rate.
That was one of the concerns that had come up. Okay, so what if we suddenly end up with 300 new units and people living in town? And how is that going to impact our services? And you had mentioned there were provisions.
Correct. I think the first misnomer that people should understand, and Donna's already chuckling, none of these are going to be built tomorrow.
Right.
The bylaw, and when we talk about the approximate 600 possible units, it's an aspirational number. The state simply asks for, identify the parcels where a 40-yard mixed-use project could be built, and then using a formula, how many individual housing units could, in theory, be built. Just because a parcel could hold, say, 100 units doesn't mean 100 will be built. It could only be 20, might only be 10, might be only be 50. But we have to start, or not at all, correct.
Or not using the overlay and going back to its original
Correct. As you and I spoke about, it's a dormant overlay. It takes a willing landlord, property owner, and a willing developer to come together. Just because your property may be identified as potential for 40R doesn't mean it'll ever happen. You as a property owner still have control, and a butter still has the opportunity to come in front of the planning board and indicate what the impact is to his or her property.
And that was some concern we had heard too, about from a butter saying, you know, this is just automatically going to happen. No, nothing is automatically going to happen.
Correct, and people are trying to use that term by right to almost strike that fear in a butter. What by right means is, for a developer, they know that they can build the project. What they don't know is how the project is going to look. And if you listen to Attorney Dubendorf, who's a very accomplished private developer attorney, he explained that at our public informational hearing. He explained that and said, for a developer, that's the biggest hurdle. Can I or can I not do the project? In this context, the developer now says with 40R, okay, I can do it. But the town, we now have the power to be able to say, we're going to shape it. What's it going to look like? Is it going to fit in? When I worked for Mayor Barrett, he was very concerned over when businesses opened up here, did it fit into the character of the community? That's what a planning board does. That's what a zoning board looks at. And that's what this process, the 40R process, will allow.
I mean, this program actually gives the town much more control than it has currently.
Really?
You know, first of all, we're directing where we want to see housing, because we know these properties have the ability to, you know, the utilities are there, the public transportation is there, so we're directing the location. But then we have a bylaw now that will shape the way these occur, and then there is a very aggressive public hearing process that still would be required if anybody were to take up on the 40R that, you know, the planning board would conduct, and that's where your abutters and the public would have ample opportunity to help shape that.
And we're running low on time, so I just wanted to emphasize here that the state does have monies that they're using to incentivize this program. Isn't that correct?
Correct. And all we have to do is build one unit, and we're able to keep the entire amount of money. A lot of folks have asked, well, Jay, what happens if we only adopt half of these parcels? What if we just start slow? It's a great question, and it could be approached, but the more practical approach to maximize the town's ability to earn as much money for doing this is to do it all in one shot. We receive the entire check for doing this. We put that money in our bank, and then all we have to do is build one unit. And we wouldn't be taking this step forward if we didn't think it was practical, but we have some really good properties, really attractive properties from a physical, logistical standpoint, but this is going to give those financial incentives to the developer to make it happen and pull it through. So we have a lot more work to do, but I think we would be negligent, frankly, as a town government if we weren't seriously considering this because of the incentive payments.
Again, one of the last things I want to say is, again, we've had a couple of conversations, and I said to you, I really can't see where the negative is. I've tried to look from all angles and listening, and my concerns have been answered. Other concerns that people have brought to me and we've discussed have been answered. I don't see a negative.
As I said at the public information hearing, we wouldn't be putting this forward as community officials if we felt it was detrimental to the community. If it wasn't a fit for us, we wouldn't do it, check or no check. But it just seems at this point it's the right fit for Adams. The negative aspects of it is hard to articulate because you're right, there really aren't that many. We're listening to the counterpoint, we're listening to those folks, we're trying to have a dialogue and take that in. But at the end of the day, I think the pros outweigh the cons for this, and we're cutting ourselves short as a community if we don't seriously consider this.
I want to thank my guests for being here, and I don't want to feel like we're dropping off, you know, in the middle of a sentence, so to speak. But I have to say this, that Jay did offer to come back at any time to talk more about this. So I would encourage people to weigh this and measure it and think about it again. Is there a date for the next public hearing?
Tuesday, October the 22nd at 6 p.m. It'll likely be held once again at the Adams Visitor Center, and we'll make sure we put out a press release once we have that firmed up.
Well, thank you.
Tuesday, October
22nd.
22nd at 6 p.m.
6 p.m.
And we'll put that up, okay, for the public. Thank you again, both
Thank
Jay
you.
and Donna, for being here, and Sarah, thanks for co-hosting. And thank you for viewing the program.